SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Have you been seriously injured? Mama Justice is here for you. Our medical team partners with top-notch doctors, surgeons, therapists, and urologists, ensuring a comprehensive recovery journey. If you've been injured, call Mama Justice today. We're here for you.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
Heck yeah, we've made it to Friday Eve. We're just cruising right through the week. We've got Joel Samy on the program at 11:05 today, and then it's Dr. Alan Theodoro. I'm excited about that interview, co-founder and CEO of Recorded Health. So we're going to hear from someone who is pioneering, a local physician here, some AI-powered, really patient-oriented tools. And it should come as no surprise that there are tremendous opportunities for artificial intelligence in those application areas, those use cases. And I'll let him tell the story, but he and his assistant reached out to me about a month or so ago. You may have seen us, Rhino, in the green room there, spent a couple hours, and he provided an overview of the various tools that are in development. It's interesting, the catalyst for that, what they've done, the status, and that this is happening right here in Mississippi. This is exciting. Because, you know this, you start with an idea, and then you develop on that idea. You don't know where that goes. Hopefully, it turns into something really significant, and again, consistent with my view that what we need here from an economic development perspective, though we're doing great. So we've had tremendous success there. I don't want to downplay that whatsoever. But it's those corporate headquarters, man. I so desperately want to see Mississippi become the home of significant corporate headquarters. That's what really does change the landscape from an economic perspective. Though we're doing fantastic. We've sort of continued our progress and the revolution going on inside the Magnolia State as a preferred home for this explosion in the data center industry. And a couple of things I wanted to say this morning related to that. I know there are legitimate concerns that we've talked about consistently here on the program. That being the pressure. And these aren't just things unique to Mississippi. This is the country and the world, honestly. How are we going to power these things? Man, they sure do consume a lot of electricity, no doubt. And then there's the water concerns. Some have, I think, overblown concerns about pollution. And by the way, that's not coming from the data centers. That's coming from the gas turbines that the electricity producers, the utility companies, are using to produce electricity. So there are some reports that the level of whatever it is that emits, I don't even know what the byproduct emission is, honestly, from a natural gas turbine. I'm talking about a turbine that's used to produce electricity, right? Which is a primary source of power, if you will, to generate power.
I would imagine it would be carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide.
Okay. Well, there are people that are saying,
but I'll double check.
This increase in electricity is the electricity footprint, if you will, to satisfy the voracious appetite for electricity these data center facilities have, is emitting more of whatever this is into the atmosphere. And
carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, and nitrous oxides.
So here's where I am on that. I thought that natural gas was supposed to be a super clean, safe form of power, right? Energy.
No. That was the argument when they were just trying to get people to stop burning coal.
Oh, I see. So
now they want everybody to go to solar and wind, so natural gas isn't good enough anymore. It's like I said, nothing's ever good enough for these people.
My concern, however, Rhino, is that we're seeing people on our side of the aisle jump onto this bandwagon. I want to ask them, are you climate change zealots as well? Are you joining in with the left on that? Because the president's all over this, honestly. He is all about boosting our electricity output to power our energy-thirsty future, knowing that this explosion in artificial intelligence, which requires data centers, is a national security priority. It's an economic viability necessity. It's a job creation engine as well. So the left always says, well, you just got to do without. Everything is, nope, you can't have that, you can't have this, can't have that, can't have this. And I always think, well, because of this problem, well, why don't we apply some human innovation to solving that problem? In this case, it's human innovation can address and resolve this need we have for more power. We know how to do that. Let's do it.
Well, the climate people are just against innovation, it seems.
That's absolutely true.
I mean, to the point where the climate activists in Europe are trying to push for their government to test out stuff that was used in, like, old Persia to keep people cool, where you have these big towers that are porous that allow the wind to blow through into the tower and down under the earth, and it cools it because you'll have a water reservoir under there, and then that air is going to circulate. But none of this is powered. It's all just big tower with holes in it through a tunnel in the hole in the ground. Like, we haven't figured out if you do that with a little bit of power, it cools it more efficiently. But that's an innovation from, exactly. I don't know, 80 years ago, and they don't like innovation. So we can't even consider that. No, you got to do it all natural. It's got to be a tower with holes and a hole in the ground.
So I did a little research on this. It's projected that in the year 2026, that's next year, coming up, data centers will consume about 7% of the total power in the country. 7%. Now, that's expected to continue to escalate. To 2030, it would be 12%. Okay, so that, fair enough. So how do we address that? First, why don't we remove all of Joe Biden's obstacles? The president's already been busy doing that, tearing down a lot of those stupid regulations and laws, obstacles to drilling for natural gas, which is considered the cleanest and most efficient power source, though the left in this country says, no, you can't use natural gas, right? In fact, haven't some states...
Why have we seen so many garbage trucks riding around touting that they run on natural gas? Clean, green, natural gas. All of a sudden, it's bad for the environment.
Or public buses, government vehicles as well.
Again, I reiterate, nothing is ever good enough for these wackos.
Until there are no humans on the planet, they're never going to be happy. States like California and New York, right, have outlawed, maybe it's just New York City and New York, I believe in the entire state of California, you cannot undergo any new construction that includes natural gas connections. Think about that, folks. In the state of Mississippi, I think a lot of people have natural gas connections. My house uses natural gas to heat the water and to provide heat as well, air heat. My air conditioning is powered with electricity. I think that's a fairly common.
Statewide in California, they are phasing out the sale of new gas furnaces and water heaters starting in 2030. But there are municipalities that have adopted bans and
on new cook-ups, right?
Yeah, like L.A. and San Fran.
There you go.
And I want to say one of them repealed it. I think it was Berkeley passed one and then repealed it because there was so much hoopla from their restaurant industry.
Right. And I was thinking about that. Wasn't it New York City they wanted to end natural gas-powered pizza ovens?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the pizza oven gate, as I called it? So how about stop shutting down efficient and low-cost coal plants? Can we not power electrical plants with coal these days, Rhino, without spewing a bunch of black smoke into the atmosphere? Don't we have technology to scrub that air before it's emitted?
It's cleaner than it was, but it's still not as clean as natural gas, and neither of them are anywhere near as clean as nuclear.
And we got plenty of natural gas in this country, an abundance of it, and nuclear is unlimited. That's just a matter of how much you want to invest in the construction of it. And so that was my next point, was let's put the green light and let's deregulate all the crazy stuff that's preventing widespread construction of nuclear power plants. Let's get that done immediately. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
For all your
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
It's a hard world to get a break in. All the good things have been taken. But girl, there are ways to make certain things pay. Though I'm dressed in these rags, I wear.
Ah, yes, that is the Animals. That's Eric Burden in the Animals, by the way. So I think I shared before my brother, who passed away at the young age of 27, was quite the accomplished musician. Even during his period in the Air Force, serving this nation in the Strategic Air Command during the Vietnam era. I'm telling you, Rhino, he sounded just like that. He could sing that song. They were popular when he was playing music. He was a little different than me with his musical talents, that played the lead guitar and lead vocalist. Of course, that's when the Beatles, the Animals were popular. The Lovin' Spoonful, he could do that one as well. But just having a little fun there. So we were talking earlier about this pressure on the electrical grid. I think most people are surprised to find out that data centers still account for, in the single digits, next year up to 6% is what is being predicted. And so the solution to this is to generate more power, not to stop building data centers and leveraging the massive benefits from cloud services, artificial intelligence, everything else, that all the other workloads that are supported and provided from centralized cloud architectures, all made possible with the invention, the advent of virtualization. VMware largely credited for that on the Intl platform. But interestingly enough, it was IBM that invented it back in the 70s. They called it partitioning instead of virtualization today, which essentially just allowed the system operators to divide a mainframe's resources up in accordance with the needs of the various workloads and then allocate cycles from the processors on board those mainframes. So we fast forward that over 50 years. Now we've got this incredibly powerful virtualization technology. And if you think about it, inside one server of about 3 inches in a 19-inch rack, in the old days, you remember those days probably, Rhino, even you're old enough to remember this, you'd have to dedicate a server to a specific application.
Oh, yeah.
So here's my email server, here's my accounting server, here's my word processing server, right? You had it, and if you had other applications, so you have what we call server sprawl, but largely those servers were idle because they only did work when you engaged and activated that application. And so the advent of virtualization made it possible to host all those applications on one little thin pizza box sized server where you could divide its resources up into these virtual environments, and every application got the configuration it needed rather than having to dedicate a server to that function. That's what made all this cloud technology and everything going on in all these data centers across the world possible.
But remember, efficiencies is a bad word.
Oh, that's right. Can't be more efficient. That's right. So let's protect and expand the reliability of the existing electric grid. There are a lot of problems happening across this country right now with respect to power disruptions. They're not being caused by data centers. They're being caused by poor planning and outrageous regulation. Right? In California, just like, I don't know, trimming the growth around the power lines, it has caused enormous problems out there. The forest fires are largely a result of, oh no, let's don't go in there and clean up the forest floor. The environmental kooks won't let you do that. And then, of course, this push for renewable energy, which was front and center in the Joe Biden years, and standing up these windmills all over the shorelines and building out these giant solar farms, which are outrageously inefficient in today's technology terms. So let's end these renewable energy mandates in the states. They actually disrupt the power grid in many cases, and they double the costs. I was proud to see that Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins says no more subsidies coming from the USDA. They flowed through the USDA from Joe Biden's totally misnamed Inflation Reduction Act. Had all these subsidies. And you remember us talking about when you and I were looking through those, like, who in the hell's going out and buying $30,000 worth of solar panels to get a $10,000 tax rebate? Who is taking advantage of this small credit you get to upgrade your power panel? The theory being, oh, you're going all electric and you're getting rid of your natural gas. You need an upgraded power panel for capacity. And by the way, here's a little credit to go buy an electric water heater.
And the only people we could think of that would take advantage of it are enemies of the left, landlords.
That's exactly right. And I'm not convinced they did. I don't know that there's any evidence of that. But that was all built in. And when we first read that,
no, because they spent all their time getting the PPP money to make renovations and raise the rent.
And have you seen the data on that? The massive amount of fraud and the collection efforts, which are falling short? Hundreds of billions of dollars that we cannot collect. You knew it was going to be a problem day one, and we have to be honest. This was passed in 2020. This was a creation of the Treasury Secretary under the president at that point. And look, on paper, it looked like a great idea. Hey, we're going to shut the economy down, and because of this COVID deal, and we're going to have to help out all these businesses some way. So let's come up with this program that allows them to borrow money through the SBA, an SBA-sponsored loan through a financial institution that has a partnership with the SBA, as long as they keep their payroll intact. That's why it's named the Payroll Protection Program. And then they're going to come back after the fact and provide all this documentation proving they kept people employed and will forgive their loans. So guess what's happening? People are showing up with that documentation, and their loans aren't actually forgivable, but they can't collect it. And the number of organizations that just scam the heck out of the thing is voluminous, off the chart. A lot of people got rich off of it. So, it goes back to what I say all the time, where there's big government money, there's big waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption. Every single dang time. And it's no different with these USDA grants. So I'm going to say it again. Let's end all federal grants. I know that's not popular with a lot of people. And I know that, unfortunately, that means There might be some useful grants that provide value to society. I'm thinking about medical research and things like that, but even those get scammed a lot, right? You're with Shay, you know what I'm talking about. There are people who literally make their livings just trying to figure out how to pull down money from the federal government without producing any measurable value for it. So let's just start by cleaning the slate. Let's just end all federal grants. How about that? Besides that, where do we get the money? We go sell treasury bills and notes and bonds, debt. We incur debt to issue grants. How dumb is that? Let's go borrow money to go give away. That's literally what we're doing. But yet, people say, go up there and be fiscally responsible, but be assured to approve my grant application. It's happening right here in Mississippi. No disrespect to those people, but it's the truth.
If you want an example of why the left doesn't actually care about the little people, doesn't actually give a rat's rear end about the poor, the hungry, all that, if you proposed to allow billionaires to write off grants that would replace federal grants, they would oppose it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Even though the grant would still be in place, dollar for dollar from private donations instead of tax money, they would lose their minds.
That's absolutely true. I hadn't thought about that. It was, by the way, it was Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin in the president's first term. He was the architect of the Paycheck Protection Program. He's the one that, and look, like I said, on paper, it looks like a great idea. Hey, businesses, you keep your people employed. We'll loan you some money because we assume your sales are going to be down. And that was what was missing in the first round of PPP. There was no revenue test. Now, in subsequent rounds, there were. But even that's turned out to be problematic because people aren't turning in their paperwork. Oh, my gosh. It's another situation where...
Wait, you're telling me Give Me That Hellcat LLC wasn't a real company?
How many dang examples have you seen of these people that are running around in like Ferraris and stuff that they bought?
Well, usually the ones that bought the Ferraris are the ones that are getting caught.
Well, that's true. We're finding out about them. But how many more out there driving around in their Maseratis that we hadn't caught yet? Oh, my gosh. I'm watching on the screen before we go to break. We talked about it yesterday. This illegal immigrant who mowed down a family, killed 3 people in Florida, is facing charges, and, well, he should be. 19 states issue driver's licenses to illegals. They should lose all federal funding. You actually were a little more abrupt on it than I was, right? They should lose all federal funding, and they should rescind and revoke all their driver's licenses. Coming right back.
From the Seabird Paint.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
How come all the pretty girls like you are taken, baby? I've been looking for someone like you to save me. Life's too easy to be so damn complicated. Take your time and I'll be waiting. Keep me in mind.
So we got the jobless claims report, the weekly jobless claims report, highest since June over the last 3 months. A little disappointing to the markets, and that's why there's a sell-off on Wall Street on the Dow and the NASDAQ. The funny money's also down to 112,000. So it's off its peak. Where did it hit? Like 122, 123 a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was up to 123.
Yeah. So the NASDAQ down 24, not a big sell-off. The Dow down over 100 points. It was in the negative territory to the tune of about 260 points earlier today, but there are lots of concerns. And, of course, all eyes are on Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Well, not all eyes. There are some eyes on the Cracker Barrel Old Country Store Incorporated stock.
Talk about that. They're changing their logo and their branding and signage, right?
Yeah, they started remodeling some of the old Cracker Barrels, and people were taking video inside, and then just a couple days ago they announced a new rebranding. with the now decade and a half old minimalist design style choice. Seems like they're a little late to that party, and they're also completely missing their target demographic, which seems to be the older generations.
Yeah.
And the older generations don't generally tend to appreciate change the same way the younger generations do. So, yeah, the recent announcements to the changing of branding and the remodeling that makes it look more like a Pier 1 Imports with a restaurant than an old general store has their shares down over $12 now.
Yeah.
It's not looking good for Cracker Barrel.
I heard the CEO this morning on an interview on the Business Channel. I can't remember her name, but she said, "Oh, the experience is the same, folks. We still have the fireplace and the rocking chairs and the little general store and the blankets and look, she's right to point that out. Everything's the same as far as that's concerned. We're just kind of changing the skin a little bit, I guess, right? Is what she said. But if you got to go out and sell that, you know you've boo-booed, is what I would say.
Yeah, it's Julie Fells Messino.
That's it, yeah.
She's been CEO since November of 2023.
Okay. Gotcha. So, look, very articulate, very bright, understands their business, but I just felt like, man, if you got to go to the country and sell this idea, this concept that, oh, everything's the same, guys, come on in, but we're changing all this skin and shell and that sort of stuff, branding, logos, etc. I don't know. Why they got to do that? Kind of reminds me of the old...
I mean, I was having a conversation with some people that know a lot more about graphic design than I do, and they were talking about, the minimalist logo has kind of run its course, and you're starting to see more and more companies get into the more old-fashioned or complex and complicated logos. Okay. So it really is like they're on the tail end of this trend. They're a little late to the party.
Yeah, but that's fine. I don't know. I don't know that there was something just screaming out there to management says, you need to go change your logo immediately. I just don't know. But that's what they're doing, and we'll see how it works out. Meantime, Target.
That CEO's out.
Yeah, and they've got some structural problems. You know, their sales and their profits, their earnings were good, but they're in a constant fight with other big retailers, right? It's an extremely competitive business. We consumers benefit from that. But
Target's not exactly recession-proof because
that's right.
I can't think of a single thing that you can get at Target cheaper than anywhere else. Usually, it's more expensive. That's right, and of course, Walmart considered their biggest competitor. Yeah. Typically, a little less. They do have some goods that you won't find in a Walmart, maybe a little higher end, and that's where a lot of people go there. But here's the thing: if they've got a problem that they need to address, and apparently investors believe they do, the market believes they do, when you elevate somebody to be the interim CEO, you know what happens? Nothing. You just got a placeholder till the next person comes on board and starts to enable change and implement change across the company. So that's not going to sit well. But back to this Jackson Hole, you know what's going on out there? We financial geeks like to track that stuff. You know, I'll be tuned in to Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell's remarks and watching the markets, as I always do. He will emerge from their meeting. Will it be later today or is it tomorrow? I think. Tomorrow, yeah. But I have seen some interviews early in the morning on the Business Channel with some of the Fed governors, and they don't appear to be inclined to me to make any adjustment to the interest rate, the benchmark interest rate. One of the things that concerns, here's what concerns and makes it difficult to navigate monetary policy. So the Federal Reserve, by statute, has two mandates, as they describe it. Stability of prices, price stability. That's a fancy way of saying just keep inflation in check. And the other is maximum employment. And that's just a fancy way of saying, you know, we've always got people that are maybe in between jobs, just graduating or just entering the workforce, looking for jobs, people retiring or trading. And so you're always got what economists refer to as the natural rate of unemployment. That, generally speaking, is in the 4% range.
So the employment report today, not too rosy. Clearly there's a downtick in the labor market. The labor market is softening, and employers appear to be in a position of greater leverage than employees. Of course, that depends on the area and the occupation and the company and the job and the skills and all that sort of stuff. But overall, in general, that's the environment. So the Fed's looking at inflation not where they want it to be. It's still closer to 3 than 2. 2 is their goal before they start cutting rates. Of course, the president is demanding they cut rates now. I heard someone from the Treasury Department this morning say that the benchmark rate needs to be 1% today, and discussing how home prices have become unaffordable. Many people in this country, no doubt, priced out. The combination.
There are more people over the age of 70 buying homes than there are under the age of 35.
You know something else, to your point, that's on the uptick? The number of retired folks over 65 that are renting. They're getting out of their home, trying to, if they have one, or they're at a point where they're trying to make a move, and now they're renting. So that the rental market, and that all that does is increase the dang price of rent, because now you got a whole new sort of demographic, right, that's entering the market as a consumer, as a customer, as a renter, as opposed to let's say that would be the rentee, right? I think I got that right. The renter, that's a weird word. I'm not sure how the ER and the EE applies there. We might have to look at that. But the landlord, I guess, would be, or the lessor versus the lessee. We would be talking about the lessee in this case. They're at a disadvantage when you've got more people out looking for rentable property. So those are the dynamics. In fact, it made the headlines in the business. On the business network, Fox Business I'm talking about, that's the top story. U.S. homes now unaffordable for typical American households as buying power drops. And it's not only the cost of the house, but the cost of insurance has spiked. The cost of electricity has spiked. And that's not because of data centers. My power bill's up here. I suspect yours is as well. I'm talking about compared to 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I'm not using it anymore.
Year over year, mine's up 80 cents.
Well, that's pretty good. Are you using the same amount?
I use level billing.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, smarty. But in general, people are experiencing higher cost of energy, and that's without data centers. You can't say that's the cause here in Mississippi. We don't have any. So that's happening without that massive investment. But nonetheless, all of those are costs of operating a home, and it's pricing a lot of people out of the market, no doubt about it. You know, it all seems to go back to the COVID stuff. Remember how crazy all that was, and we had 1% mortgage rates. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but the dang prime for a while was 0. Usually it's 1.5 to 2 over that. So if people were rushing out, and of course a lot of people are upset because big private equity firms went out and were buying up real estate as well. Although, if you look at the percentage that they own, it's infinitesimal. People have grossly overreacted to that. And then I always ask
but in fairness, a large percent of that infinitesimally small percent are the houses in most demand.
That could be. So what do we want to do? Just prohibit them from buying a house? You want to
but those houses tend to steer housing prices.
Sure.
And when you've got two investment firms bidding each other for one house, that's going to steer the entire housing market towards that price point.
That's true. And maybe they saw what is happening today. Maybe they had some vision as to that made those investments pretty good. I think one thing that could help there to roll the market is, in fact, to pass a tax provision. Remember, we couldn't get that through because of the budgetary constraints. That would make the capital gain on the sale of a primary residence exempt from income tax. I'll explain on the other side of the break.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Yes, the old level billing program. Yeah, I used to have
Comes
that.
in handy.
I got away from it. Yeah, I know. It's good. So, I'm not trying to downplay folks' concerns. I want to make that clear. But we also have to deal with the facts. There are people showing up that are saying that stuff's making them sick before it's even in production. And you shouldn't be shocked or surprised that there are opportunistic people out there. You know, the best example...
It's not even worthy of a no.
I know. that I always come back to that happened decades ago. Was it somebody sued McDonald's because the coffee was hot or something and it scalded their tongue? Remember that?
Well, no, that was a legitimate lawsuit because at the time McDonald's served their coffee near boiling point so that it would still be hot whenever you got to your destination.
Okay.
And it was an elderly lady that it spilled in her lap. And the only thing she wanted in the lawsuit was just help paying the medical bills because she had like third-degree burns in her lap. You can imagine the sensitive parts of your body that could be burned in a third degree. That's not good. And they didn't even want to do that, so it went to court and it became this whole thing. The better example of crazy lawsuits is the guy that broke into a family's home when they went on vacation and walked out into the garage with the door locking behind him. And the emergency garage door opener didn't work. So he was locked in their garage while they were still on vacation, and all he had to eat was dog food and hot Diet Coke.
I remember that.
And he sued and won for false imprisonment.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I totally remember that. But the only point I'm making is I think if McDonald's – here's the problem in our legal system. If they said, okay, we'll pay for your medical bills associated with that, which are nothing. You open up the door. Everybody that goes through has got some medical problem as a result of whatever they consumed that came from McDonald's. And then you got to have an army of lawyers to go deal with that. But I'll just say again, do you have to tell people? Now we have all these signs everywhere, right? Caution, coffee's hot. Okay, thanks. What do you want, cold coffee? I think I'd just be happy if they get the ice cream machine to work, right?
Well, now it seems to work, now that they have third-party vendors that can come in and fix it.
That was the problem, is they had a lockdown on that. You couldn't get parts, couldn't use third parties, and once they opened that door, that's changed that. But you know what I'm saying. There are people out there abuse our legal system, and it's all about, and you get into court, it's redistribution. I say, you got more money than them, you just give them some. And that's what I object to, that you got to pay your way out no matter what. One
of the silliest attempts at that, it was the trend, I think it's been a couple of years ago now, where people were going into Walmart and they would get a gallon jug of milk, throw it in the air, let it splatter on the ground, and then they would walk over it and slip. And video it and put it on social media. Well, that in and of itself was the trend. Just be stupid in public for invisible internet cool points.
Yep.
Then people thought, oh, well, I slipped at Walmart. I heard you can get rich on that. And then they went to court, and the defense showed the video that they put on their own social media, and it didn't go well for them. Well, and you know that. My wife worked in retail. It seemed like they were constantly hit with threats or lawsuits of injuries on the escalators, you know, and that kind of stuff. So I'm only making a statement that we have an over-litigious society, that everybody is trying to figure out a way to scam people that have more money than they do. And it's only been getting worse since the 90s. Correct. And that's the point there. So what was that cheesy Hulk Hogan movie where he moved the bike because the bikers were being the stereotypical protagonistic or antagonistic bikers, and what are you going to do, beat me up? No, I'm going to sue you. Exactly. And that was 93. That's kind of where we are. Everything's about suing, right? Just, you don't like it, just go throw a lawsuit. And unfortunately, there are a lot of very opportunistic lawyers who are ready to pounce and take in their share. So
I attended
Another silly warning label: caution, take pizza out of box before eating.
That's excellent. I get to it later on in the program. We got Joel, host of America's Roundtable Radio program and co-founder of International Leaders Summit, coming up after Fox News SuperTalk News. But Amazon Web Services had a little appreciation event this morning out in Madison for all the companies involved in the project. Mississippi companies primarily, of course, are delivering those services, and they were well represented, as well as our board at Makita. And I got to tell you about the things the couple of Amazon principals responsible for the project here said that have been involved in these projects across the world. It's good stuff, man. We should be proud here in Mississippi. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back. Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
It's our pleasure to welcome now our good friend Joel, host of America's Roundtable Radio program, co-founder of the International Leaders Summit. So, Joel, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Gerard. It's great to be with you all at SuperTalk Mississippi Media.
You bet. Love that American flag in the background there, man. That looks great. So I assume that's your International Leaders Summit you're off your right shoulder there, right?
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. And actually, just wanting to make sure we get the message out of our commitment to American values and our shared principles. And we're looking forward to the 250th anniversary of America coming up in 2026.
Amen. So President Trump, he says, look, we've had enough of the crime and the chaos in America's, the nation's capital, that being Washington, D.C., literally right outside the doors of the Capitol complex there, the White House, etc. And a lot of people have recognized that in so many of these Democrat-run cities, seems like the city leaders, starting with the mayor all the way through, often even the law enforcement officers, at least at the management level, they provide more deference to the criminals than they are show concern for the actual victims of crime. So the president says, enough, we're going to clean up the nation's capital, and I'm going to deploy the National Guard in there. What do you think, Joel?
Absolutely, and certainly a shout out to Governor Tate Reeves and the people of Mississippi for sending approximately 200 troops from Mississippi's National Guard to our nation's capital. And in fact, the Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, has been hit hard by rising rates of crime, homelessness, and graffiti all over the place. And in fact, we are certainly not safe when we walk on the streets of Washington, D.C. during the evenings. We have heard a number of stories, in fact, from other news outlets where their media leaders are mugged or are harassed by individuals on the streets, and this has to stop.
Yeah.
In fact, President Trump is sending a great message to all cities that are governed by Democrat leaders. It's time to stand on the side of American citizens, those that abide by the rule of law, law-abiding citizens, decent, hardworking people, and not protect criminals.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm reminded, Joel, of the incident involving Senator Rand Paul. Remember how he was pushed and shoved and harassed after an event, I believe, that was held on the White House lawn in the evening as he was walking back with his wife to his hotel. It's a sad day, is it not, when a United States senator is accosted like that and to some extent physically assaulted just walking the streets of the nation's capital.
Absolutely. And what you don't hear about in the news is the carjackings that take place. In fact, not too long ago, a member of Congress experienced a situation where he was forced out of his own vehicle and criminals just drove away. We heard about people being shot while sitting in their cars waiting to pick up their spouses from their respective places of work, or being, harassed or attacked or mugged. And in fact, I think this is not just only a signal to Washington, D.C., but to the rest of the cities that are run by Democrat leaders. It's time for them to start cleaning up their cities, getting rid of crime, and not protecting criminals. And I think that is a very strong law and order message by America's president for all of these Democratic leaders for too long, that they have just allowed our beautiful cities, our great iconic cities, to devolve into places where it's unsafe for families to walk. In fact, as we mentioned just earlier on, we look forward to celebrating America's 250th anniversary. And Gerard, wouldn't it be great to have Americans coming out from all over the country to enjoy our nation's capital? This city was founded by our founding generation. And they left it to posterity. But if we let it go to, what we have seen devolving in so many cities, it would be a shame for them to walk on these streets today. So President Trump is doing the right thing. It's principled leadership, and it's long time in coming.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And, I know that the Democrats are really upset about this move here. And I think, honestly, the president and his inner circle decided that this was kind of a last resort. But there's no change. I mean, he's talked about lawlessness on our streets, in particular in the Democrat-run cities. But the Democrats in charge don't make any changes. So I think the response should be, well, if your city wasn't a mess, we wouldn't have to do this. Just clean it up, and this action wouldn't be necessary.
Well, taxpayers are paying for all of these services that we provide in these cities.
Yeah.
And it's time that these Democrat leaders either, shape up and do the work that's needed, or resign and let others take the responsibility and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
For too long, America's cities have become places that I would consider no-go zones, in a sense, whereby law-abiding citizens have a difficulty in feeling safe in their own communities.
Yeah.
And we're not hearing this, in our media reports. I mean, we're talking about residents, long-term residents of Washington, D.C., and usually they show, a few people protesting on the streets against ICE. We were with Chief Michael Banks this past weekend, and he mentioned how he walked on the streets with all these great federal officers and D.C. police, and they were appreciative of the fact that, residents were appreciative of the fact that there is a show of force in the sense of law and order. And this is great for America's capital city and for the rest of the nation.
Well, hopefully it motivates them to do something internally and at the city level. And I dare say the president would withdraw the troops and remove them from their presence there in the city if he sees some progress being made and genuine interest in cleaning it up. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, but I hope we make some progress there. Let's turn our attention, Joel, to this conflict in Ukraine with Russia and, of course, the president trying to broker a peace deal. We've talked with you and Natasha about this considerably. But overnight, Putin orders drone strikes in Ukraine that on some of the energy facilities. I don't know that there were any casualties. I know that several were injured. He's just relentless and doesn't look like he'll stop.
Well, that is true. In fact, we have seen these attacks escalating over the past few weeks. And of course, Putin is wanting to seize more territory. But the truth of the matter is that we're coming closer to President Trump leading the way to end the war on Europe's continent. And for too long, we have seen Democratic leaders, including Presidents Obama and Biden and then Secretary of State Clinton, emboldening President Putin. And I'd just like to share this very brief excerpt that was relayed to us all when Obama actually was sharing this with, at that time, President Medvedev. And you may remember that sort of hot mic moment. And this is what Obama said. On all these issues, but particularly missile defense, this can be solved. But it's important for him, that is President Vladimir Putin, to give me space. This is my last election. And he continued, after my election, I have more flexibility. Then Medvedev replied, no problem. I understand. I will transmit this information to Vladimir. Well, I did not do a good job on that accent, but I just want to let you know that's exactly what Obama did, was giving more room for Putin at that time to actually cause more damage. And so is the case with Germany's Merkel. All of them emboldened Putin. And for the first time, Putin realizes he has a strong leader, a principal leader, holding him to account. So these secondary sanctions that have been placed on countries that are going to be purchasing oil or thinking about purchasing Russian oil have gotten a notice. India has paused purchasing Russian oil. So at the end of the day, Vladimir Putin realizes that he cannot continue to fund a war without financial resources. And President Trump is sticking by his principles. And what I relate to our friends and colleagues is the fact that when you look at what President Trump has done, the mission that he has undertaken, it's the relentless pursuit of peace for the world.
Yeah.
Why spend billions of dollars sending bombs to different places so that they can, be used to killing people? I mean, we have to remember that in 2016, actually the end of President Obama's term in office in 2016, the United States dropped an estimated 26,171 bombs on seven different countries.
Joel, we got to go. We appreciate you joining.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so awesome.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
That's Baba O'Reilly. Most people don't think that's the name of the song, right? So, Teenage Wasteland, maybe? Is the
That's usually what people call it.
people don't. And that, of course, that is part of the lyrics. I have no idea what that means exactly. But that, of course, is The Who. Man, would I've liked to see them in person. Right? Roger Daltrey there, the lead vocalist. Is it Keith Moon? That's the lead guitarist. Isn't that his name? He famously obliterates his guitar there on the stage. That's kind of his trademark.
Who's the drummer?
Okay, who's the lead guitarist? What's his name? You're right. I always confuse the drummer and the lead guitarist for The Who.
Let's see. The Who, their classic lineup was Roger Daltrey, vocalist, Pete Townshend.
Pete Townshend, that's it. That's
John
it.
Entwistle as bassist and Keith Moon
My
as
bad.
drummer.
Keith Moon. I always confuse him. And by the way, it's Pete Townshend. S-H. I'm assuming that's a British kind of version of. It probably got Americanized, right, when the Townshends immigrated into this country and it became Townsend. You think maybe? I bet that's the case. Yeah. So that almost kind of has a bit of a Scottish tone to it. You think maybe Wales, Scotland, somewhere?
It would probably be easier to say in the Scottish brogue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But he's, of course, known
I'm
for...
just picturing Sean Connery saying it. Yeah, it makes sense.
He, of course, I'm sure we could find video of Pete destroying his guitar, especially after that song, right? At the end, jumping up and down. Oh, man. Oh, for the good old days of rock and roll, as they say. We're back with you, however, in the Element Well studio. We appreciate you being with us today. So, the Mississippi Lottery Corporation, I want to pass that on. They're introducing some new games coming up on Labor Day, and of course, they're constantly introducing new games. The Powerball jackpot's up to $700 million. Now, you've heard a lot of people say, yeah, I don't play till it gets up to around $1 billion or something. So it's $700 million.
When it's a record-breaking jackpot, then I'll give them my $2.
There you go. So more games coming, and then of course they call it the Loaded Family. Those arrive in stores Friday, August 29th, just a couple of weeks, less than a couple of weeks.
Next Friday.
Yeah. And then we roll into Labor Day. It's hard to believe. College football season gets kicked off, etc. You know,
Somebody got on to me yesterday when I said high school football kicks off next week, and I stand by that because that's when the full slate gets going. But there are some high school football games this weekend
that are going to be played this weekend. Yes. That's right. But in general, in mass, it gets kicked off the next weekend. So
this week's more like week 0.
Yeah, when it's hot, by the way. So they got water breaks and so forth to guard against the cramping, and inevitably you'll see some of those kids that have to be helped off the field because their cramps are so severe because you just dehydrate, of course, and the muscles don't like that, right? And they seize up. I have to be careful myself this time of year, just all the walking and exercise I do, even at night. I mean, when it's at night and you're wringing wet when you come in for a 2.5-mile walk, you know it's humid out there. So you got to drink plenty of water to keep the old body hydrated. Very important.
Well, I mean, exercise at night is like doing yard work on a cloudy day. You still got to be wary of the hydration just because you're not as hot as you would think you would be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what's the advice always given? Drink before you get hot and dehydrated. Hydrate yourself before, right?
Oh, yeah.
Even though I'm not really thirsty, you need to be drinking it now because that kind of prepares your body for the exertion. I don't mean to be doctor-like here. So
if you have a long day of yard work ahead of you, or you have something that will be more strenuous than your average activity, 24 hours before, carbo load. Eat you a big old plate of spaghetti or something.
Yeah.
Your body will thank you.
I knew some bodybuilders, that would go on these protein diets, I guess, to build muscle. But leading up to the show, they just carved themselves out like crazy, right, to build up energy, I guess, and get ready for the exertion.
I mean, you look at the marathon runners and the Tour de France cyclists and stuff like that, where they're really pushing their bodies to the extreme.
Yeah.
They will eat more than I could ever fathom in the 24 hours leading up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's because you're going to expend it all. Yeah, you're going to burn it, so no doubt.
And I'm not saying you're getting to that level of strenuous activity of running a marathon, but if you are normally a relatively sedentary person and then all of a sudden you have plans to do something that's more strenuous, you will thank yourself later if you hydrate and carbo load.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, I've shared before that I generally rise early in the morning, and I know you do too, and start consuming all the news that's occurred. And it gets kicked off about 3 o'clock in the morning when your inbox is full of all these various news sources, newsletters of the day or links to their stories and so forth. And then...
Well, that's also the time of nightly news across the pond, and they're 6 hours ahead.
That's a good point. And lots of stuff breaks and happens there. And, of course, I'd like to read all the financial news and the expectations in the markets and things like that, Bloomberg and Forbes, Reuters, Investopedia always has a good daily news letter, says, hey, 5 things you need to be watching out for today with respect to markets. But where I was going with this is I typically tune in to Maria Bartiromo on the Fox Business Channel. And she, of course, is out, as she normally is, in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, interviewing Fed governors. And she had a great interview, I think, with the Kansas City Fed governor this morning. And I don't get the feeling they're going to reduce rates in this cycle. I think the market's pricing that in as well. But she, in her discussion with him, stated that, the deficit's been trimmed. She said, Rhino, by $400 billion this year versus last year. Generally, her information is spot on, is accurate, very reliable. She's not on this one. The deficit this year is not down. It's actually up relative to last year. So we're on a run rate at this point. It was about $1.5 trillion at this point last year. It's about $1.6 through July now, and that means 3 months remaining. The fiscal year of the federal government ends September 30th, and you can extrapolate from that. We're headed for a 1.9 billion. Trillion to 2 trillion. It's really crazy, isn't it, when you're this billions and trillions that we have to think in terms of trillions and almost everything we discussed with respect to the federal government. $7 trillion of spending and $5 trillion of revenue and $1 trillion on interest and $1.5 trillion of Social Security. Medicare comes in, believe it or not, below $1 trillion. It's only $950 billion. Medicaid, $620. I'm just going through the major spending categories. $850 for defense, $850 for non-defense. So all discretionary spending comes in at about $1.7 trillion. But she got that wrong, and she presented that to the Fed governor, who didn't want to correct her. But I think her point was, hey, you guys can lower rates because our deficits are going down, and that should mean we're borrowing less money, and thus inflation should be more muted. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It's not actually what's happening. And my data is from the United States Treasury. Now, I guess they're subject to making a mistake, not to the level the Bureau of Labor Statistics makes. And we got a new sheriff in town over there. I'm hopeful that we're going to start getting some meaningful, accurate, actionable data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, not this crazy stuff that gets revised every dang time a month or 2 months later, like, you only missed it by 80% here. Not a little revision. So we got some work to do there. It looks like, based on current projections, the national debt will surpass $53 trillion in 10 years. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook Paint Doc.
Adoring fans, it's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio on the C Spire text line. Gerard got to see the Who in Dallas about 1970. Man, that's the middle of their heyday right there, their popularity. We grew up in Tyler, Texas. Yeah, very familiar with that. That's where, what the heck was his name? The running back was from. The Tyler Rose, right? That played for Houston? Earl Campbell, right? Isn't that where he's from? Look it up. Yeah. About 100 miles from Big D. It was an incredible show. The warm-up band was Leonard Skinner. That's Mark Lofton, emeritus professor at Ole Miss. Appreciate you sharing that. I bet that was pretty good, man. Can you imagine that? Leonard Skinner being the warm-up for the Who? What a concert that would be. Man, that's awesome. Thank you. Yep, Keith Moon was the drummer that passed away. Pete Townshend played guitar. Roger Daltrey sang. John, how do you pronounce his last name? Entwistle? Is that right? Yeah. Played bass. What a great group. Appreciate that. It's on the C Spire text line as well. Walter in Tupelo says, crime is a problem in D.C. Unfortunately, this guard military occupation is all for show. Is it really? I mean, folks are reporting that, but whose statistics do you believe is part of the problem? Perhaps more of an indicator, as you've seen this, Brett Baer, the popular Fox News journalist, he got stopped. He got a speeding ticket, right? And, he got a speeding ticket
in his white G-Wagon.
Yeah, look this up for me. He's highly compensated. I'm gonna let you tell me what he makes. Tell the folks there.
It's not public, but reports estimate his annual income to be between $20 and $25 million a year.
How about that? So, and look, that's fine with me, right? That obviously the network has done the math and figured out it's worth paying him $20, $25 million a year to do that. It's not like what was it?
It's a pretty decent raise considering prior to 2021 his reported contract was at $7 million a year.
Well, I was going to say 10 is the figure I remember. Just when I looked it up a few years ago, I was a little stunned to find out, hey, it makes $10 million a year. So you're saying between 25 and 30 now.
2025.
Right? Okay. So what was it that just shut down? Was it PBS that was losing a bunch of money? What was losing a bunch of money that just shut down?
The Colbert Show?
The Colbert Show, yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking PBS because it all kind of happened.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah, and so, of course, they're arguing, no, it's the network is just against Colbert. They're trying to appease Trump and all that kind of crap. No, it's because you're losing your shirt. So he was highly compensated as well, right? I mean, he was, I think, multiple seven figures.
Yeah, they were losing $40 million a year.
Right. And paying him, what, 20 or something insane like that? And so where I was going with this, and maybe think about Brett, when you said Brett Baer.
But it doesn't even make sense that his company, like the argument is, oh, well, the people within his company are bending the knee to King Trump because Colbert's been mean to Trump. And it's like, yeah, but those same people gave Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park $1.5 billion over 5 years, and every new episode they've made has poked fun at the Trump administration.
Unbelievable.
So, I mean, it's not an ideological ouster for Colbert. He literally was losing them money.
It's just a business decision. They can't accept that, can they? In fact, they would tell you, well, it's okay if we're losing money. I'm having an impact. I'm getting the anti-Trump left-wing talking point message out there. That's literally the way they think. That's more important than the bottom line. Until you, as Maggie Thatcher famously said, you run out of other people's money because they're literally spending investors' money here. Or the money that they're unable to get from advertisers, which is their primary source of revenue, because nobody's watching their crap. So, Joy Reid, the race lady, I kind of miss her being over there at MSNBC.
She's no less crazy.
Always provided plenty of fodder for us to discuss. But you remember a few years ago, and she was on, as she was almost every day, that's why we call her the race lady, the tirade about income inequality and how minorities in this country are suppressed and the deck is stacked against them. In fact, that's what critical race theory is all about, that racism is more of a social construct rather than personal biases. And what they mean by that is our economic systems, our legal systems, our educational systems, everything is set up to favor non-minorities and to discriminate against minorities. And I found that so rich from a person when, you remember I had you look it up, and she was making $1.6 million and attended Harvard. So she got an education at Harvard, and she would complain, of course, that they discriminate.
Well, she got that really expensive piece of paper. I don't think she got all that educated.
Right.
Because her latest diatribe was that white people have not invented anything. They've just stolen it from blacks.
I saw that. But she, when she left, by the way, when they fired her, was making $3 million. Now, Brett Baer's making, you said 25 to 30.
20 to 25.
20, 25. Okay. But if you look at the revenue his show produces, because it's so widely viewed, relative to the revenue her show produces, because the number of people that tune in are fewer than are tuned in to me and you right now. And we don't make $3 million doing that. And nor are our advertisers going to pay the tariff, if you will, to justify and provide the income necessary to pay me and you $3 million. And that's what was happening to Joy Reid and Stephen Colbert. Second order thinking, big time here. There's no telling what the advertising revenue is that Brett Baer's show produces, because it's just a popular show. A lot of people tune in, and guess where the advertisers go? Where people watch and listen. More second order thinking. But yeah, she is on a rant here lately about white people didn't invent anything. Oh my gosh. Literally in their prime time, I think it's been reported they have like 300,000 people tuned in across the country to Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow and the other lunatics over there. I don't know how they make, honestly, the numbers work when you think about the cost associated with that, with delivering a program like that.
Well, I mean, in fairness, MSNBC has never really been their moneymaker.
No, absolutely.
It was, for the longest time, it was the boring channel.
That's right. But
then they got a bunch of talking heads to say radical stuff, and their numbers went up, and then the radicalness wore off.
That's true. You're right about that.
They just became shrieking harpies.
But if you're if you want to be altruistic and charitable and just stand up and fund a network just to promote a message, sure, you can do that. Nothing's preventing you. But when you start talking about the business proposition, we need to actually produce a profit to sustain this enterprise, that becomes a totally different matter. And I think that's what happened in management there, and you know the rest of the story. Dana Hasberg said Keith really got mad when Pete set off an explosive in his bass drum. I remember that.
Popped his eardrum.
Oh, that's right. Sure did. All right, yeah.
The overpressure.
Jim in the Delta says, Gerard, I've always appreciated your optimism and positive attitude. It has even inspired me to be honest. Please don't lose that. Don't say everybody's looking for a way to scam. Remember, there's still millions of good people in this country. God bless. No, you're right, Jim, and I apologize for generalizing. I'm making the point that anytime government establishes these big money programs, unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this country that just dream up ways to scam it. But Jim is right. The vast majority of the people in this country are honest people and aren't looking to do that. Unfortunately, the damage done by a handful of bad actors does have a ripple effect on all of us. And it makes us all, including me, cynical about, well, just get out of the grant business, federal government, because you don't seem to be able to prevent unfair use of it. Misuse, misspending. It's the same thing at the state level on a much smaller scale, of course. But again, the program in concept, the PPP program, made sense. It absolutely did, and it overall you could say it was a good thing. But unfortunately, now we're faced with trying to collect what amounts to hundreds of billions of dollars from bad actors who did scam it. You're right. Appreciate that, Jim. Coming right back. Stay with us.
Poly up a Mississippi.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
What a great tune that is. Creedence Clearwater Revival, a.k.a. CCR. Born on the Bayou. That, of course, Rhino, is in the set list for the house band. And our lead guitarist, Representative Steve Lott, that little opening intro, ding, kind of held that note right there. He's pretty good at that, man. It's pretty neat. And then I jump in with a little snare and cymbal and then onto the hi-hat. Great tune. CCR. I like playing that. Of course, when we went to Neshoba, because of the weather, we had to cut our set list short. We didn't get to play that one. But more gigs are coming up. We're going to play that one.
But do y'all do the A-side, Proud Mary?
No. And that's not in the set list, but Have You Ever Seen the Rain Is? And we didn't get to play that one either. Another great CCR tune. And they're differences of opinion as to what the underlying message is in that. You have suggested that many people believe it was a song about their imminent breakup as a band. Others have said that this was during the Vietnam era, and it was about serving in Vietnam, where you're always dealing with rain in the jungles there. Could apply to either, I would say. I don't know if John Fogerty, the lead singer, of course, I don't know if he's ever weighed in and said, yeah, this is what it's about. You know, sometimes they will.
I don't remember if that came up in his legal battle, because I remember he did have to go to court after he went solo.
Okay.
And he played a CCR song and then played one of his songs, and he was like, see, that's just the way I play guitar.
Well, I hope we don't bore the folks out there digging into some of this music history a bit. I hope you guys enjoy that. Just have to take a little break from all the crazy stuff going on in the world of politics and economic matters, politics both outside of the state at the federal level, across the country, as well as inside the state of Mississippi.
Which there is one thing that's kind of happened since we started the show and we haven't touched on yet, is the New York Appeals Court threw out the civil fraud fine against Trump.
It's big news. It was a dumb lawsuit to start with. It's one of those things where I want to say it's none ya business. This was a private agreement between him and his various financial partners, and they were perfectly fine with his financial statements and financial history and resume as presented, sufficient to loan him money, which he paid back. It's none of your dang business, Letitia James. You're just all about scoring political points and trying to bring down the president. That's a private matter.
And obfuscating from her mortgage fraud.
Yeah, so you were talking about that with me on the break. How many more are gonna surface that have engaged in mortgage fraud? Adam Schiff, of course, and now a Fed governor. And the fraud they're committing, explain that to the folks. It has to do with misrepresenting what's their primary residence and what's a secondary residence, which has an effect on your taxes, and also could have an effect on your mortgage rates and so forth. but they're not being honest about that.
Yeah,
right?
The Fed governor is Lisa Cook, that has been accused of mortgage fraud.
Is that just crazy? How do you get to the level of being a Fed governor if you've committed mortgage fraud? I know that it's easy to sort of hide that and disguise that as part of the vetting process, but don't you just know in your head somebody some way down the line is going to figure this out? I guess you don't care? Is that what happens? Yeah, I'll enjoy being a Fed governor in the meantime.
Or is it so prevalent that it's just kind of run-of-the-mill, and the only reason we know about them is because they do have opposition researchers looking into it?
That's true. Well, that's just wrong, because you committed fraud, and you're serving at a very high level crafting monetary policy that affects the global economy, not just the national economy, the global economy. You can't serve in that role if you can't be honest about your own personal finances. You shouldn't be, in my view, allowed. So, not trying to...
Trump has called for her to resign.
He sure has. And said he's looking at ways that he could terminate her, as a matter of fact. Yeah, for cause in this case. That's exactly right. But what is Trump calling pencil neck Adam Schiff? He's really something. I could say a lot of things, but he's like spent his career, it appears. Now he's a senator. He used to be in the House, but certainly when he was in the House, he was the one that spearheaded the efforts to impeach and remove President Trump.
And it also seems like it was him and Swalwell that were the main leaks.
Exactly right. But he has been exposed as engaging in mortgage fraud. That's absolutely right. One quick thing that I wanted to point out is the way to, I think, kind of see some movement in this housing industry is to end the capital gains taxation on a profit, a gain one would make on their personal residence. There's a lot of older people sitting on big gains that won't move because they don't want to pay the taxes. Coming right back with Dr. Theodoro.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We are live in the Element Well studio. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of the program on this
Friday Eve.
We're pleased to welcome now Dr. David Alan Theodoro. He's the co-founder and CEO of a company called Recorded Health. Dr. Theodoro, good to see you, sir. I've talked about the first meeting you and I had discussing this rather novel technology that you and some others are working on, the platforms you've created, AI-powered. Tell the folks first your background. What's your day job?
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Gerard, for this opportunity. I appreciate being here. My day job, and which has been for the last 28 years, is an actively practicing cardiac surgeon. So I've been that as a day job person since 1997. The majority of that was in St. Louis for about 24 years, and we've been blessed to be in Mississippi now for the last 5 years.
Okay. So what was the catalyst for the idea to create this Recorded Health company, and talk about kind of the main platform you discussed with me that's really more of a patient-enabling tool?
I think that's a good prelude, and thank you. So in addition to cardiac surgery, a decade plus ago, I got really interested and really involved in matters of population health management. So I saw what the EMR, the EHR, the electronic health record could produce with regards to managing patient populations. And so the idea was spawned based on a really, really significant problem that I wished to tackle. And in that problem, I believe should be handled and is the genesis, if you will, of Recorded Health in a platform for patient empowerment. So let me talk about the problem really quick first, as you and I discussed earlier.
Yeah.
The typical patient forgets the vast majority of the important conversation that they have with their healthcare provider, be that a doctor, a nurse practitioner, an assistant, a physician's assistant, you name it. Those are generally more important conversations than not, and the average patient has no capacity, of no fault of their own, to recall at scale the important information within those conversations. We believe that tracks directly to impaired healthcare outcomes, likely touches the overall extreme waste in healthcare, now estimated to be in excess of $1 trillion a year on a total spend now that's reached $5 trillion. Most healthcare economists would think somewhere between 25 cents and 33 cents of every dollar is actual waste. So our thought was that, at least to some degree, this horrible lack of recall, understanding, knowledge attainment, lack of engagement, and lack of compliance at least touches that healthcare waste, and certainly touches healthcare aspects, healthcare outcome issues in a really meaningful way.
Yeah.
So, in order to address that problem, idea came pre-COVID when we were in St. Louis. COVID came. We moved, my wife and I, to Mississippi, and it wasn't until we got here that the pieces started to fall in place. And by that I mean I found 3 world-class, brilliant partners to come alongside of me on this journey, if you will. And from that, Recorded Health was born. Out of Recorded Health, our first product called My Doc Said came to life. And so if we can't remember what My Doc Said can help us remember.
So provide to us just a typical use case example. I got to believe that you, as in your line of work as a physician, you run into this issue, I'm sure, right? Where you have a conversation with a patient, maybe what the content of that conversation doesn't make its way into the digital chart. The patient attempts to explain to someone else, their family, a loved one, friends, what their condition is, what the doctor said that didn't make its way into the chart, and maybe they get a little confused. I bet that after that happens, that a family member calls you and says, what exactly did you tell the patient when you talked to him? Because they're not able to regurgitate it. Am I pronouncing that? I mean, am I describing that correctly? Is that kind of what happens?
I think, Gerard, you've just absolutely outlined it beautifully. I'm not sure there's a whole lot more for me to add, but let me try.
Okay.
Certainly, in my years of dealing with patients, now almost 30. It's pervasive and it's universal, and no one is spared from it. And especially when we take a wide-angle view and understand that if you have a chronic illness, for instance, or even an acute illness, which is more common in my line of work, we see a problem, to your point, and patient has been to their primary care doctor, followed by their cardiologist. Let's assume they have a cardiac surgery-related problem, and then make it to me. And all along that journey, so to speak, they've had a lot of conversations with their care providers. A lot of important information is given during those intimate times, if you will, and they come to me, more classic than not, with a relatively poor understanding of what's been said. Again, no problem, no fault of their own, and certainly no fault of the healthcare giver. It's just the human in usually those relatively emotionally charged type of situations, and for any number of other reasons, just can't remember. We all forget.
So how does the tool work in a practical perspective? So an example is, you have just completed a test, and the doctor comes back into the exam room, says, okay, these are the results of the test. This is what that means from a prognosis perspective, perhaps from a treatment perspective. These are the other risks associated with this condition. A cancer diagnosis is a common example of that, right? Because that's extremely complicated, and often unpredictable, but we're much better at it than we used to do because of the advent of medical technology. So you're having that conversation, and you're trying to fit all that in your brain, and then recall it and store it up. So how do you change that so that you can record that conversation in a way that is then understandable permanently to the patient, that they can review even in the future?
Absolutely. And Gerard, you may be the only person in the world that after a conversation a month ago fully remembers everything that we said. It's astonishing. But anyway, most can't. You may be that person who can. But anyway, the app is available right now from the Apple Play App Store and the Google Play Store. And so if you were to have the app loaded on your phone and your doctor walks in and you trigger the app for the recording, you have a complete with all of the humanity, the give and take, the back and forth of a legitimate patient to caregiver dialogue. When that visit, irrespective of how long it goes, is over, the patient can actually take that audio recording and through a series of very intuitive user interfaces, send it, if you will, in an encrypted, safe, cyber-secure way to our cloud platform where, well, now that recording exists in a HIPAA-compliant and cyber-secure fashion, and then our AI goes to work. So the audio is translated through a technology called natural language processing to a full unabridged text. The text is then subjected to a self-hosted prompt-engineered LLM. That's a mouthful. But in other words, the text that the machine learning algorithms have to work on, they don't work on audio, they work on text, does not go out to the public internet. It stays behind our firewalls, as you could expect and would expect. And then the LLM creates a patient care summary based solely on that interaction between the patient and their caregiver. And so the output from the audio is an unabridged text, so the patient can certainly and does have on-demand 24/7 access to both the audio, the unabridged text, and of course the patient care summary. The patient care summary is further highlighted with what we call odd or confusing words, terms, or phrases that the doctor may have used that aren't particularly familiar to the patient. There's a technology that we call name entity recognition, or NER, that identifies these words and then searches the internet and links those words out to other trusted sources. So we really do look at this as a patient educational tool and an empowerment tool.
Okay. We got a break on us right now, but you can hang around, keep talking to us, right?
Thank
we
you.
got some more questions. We got Dr. Theodoro, the co-founder and CEO of Recorded Health, an AI-powered patient, I'm going to call it a patient enablement tool. How about that?
I like that.
We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. Stay with us.
Hey, this is Bob.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Dr. Alan Theodoro. He's a surgeon at a local hospital. You pretty much work at St. Dominic. Do you
I
not?
do. Yeah, I lead the cardiac surgery platform.
Well, that's what
there.
I thought.
Yeah.
And the institution's kind of known for its cardiovascular program.
You know, it has a
treatment,
wonderful history that goes back over 50 years.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so let's keep talking about this because I know this is happening every day. I mean, I've personally had this experience when I had a cancer diagnosis back in 2006. And, you know, you're latching on to every word that the physician is saying. And my situation was kind of interesting in that at first it's like, I think you're done. We don't need to do anything. And then the GI called me the next day. Well, I talked it over with my colleagues as they normally do. And half of them said, don't do anything. And half of them said, you ought to, you know, consider surgery. But, man, you listen to everything. You try to process that, consume it, store it in your head, because you want to share that with your loved ones. And then often you're right. As part of the dialogue, as you described it, there will be terms, words, language used that is kind of natural to a physician, but maybe not to a patient. And some are better than others at breaking that down into layman's terms. And that's what this tool at least is designed to accomplish. Is that fair?
I would agree completely with that. And where we left off was the audio to transcript, and the transcript to summary, and the summary highlighted and annotated with, you know, odd words, et cetera, et cetera. But the key thing that's different from our platform and others is this is patient-centric, patient-owned, patient-controlled. Okay. So it really is your data in the purest of forms. And then in sort of the beauty, you mentioned a cancer diagnosis. One of my partners had a loved one with a similar diagnosis. That diagnosis is way beyond one conversation. I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek. It is tens and 20s, maybe 100 conversations with different doctors as they treat this more chronic type of situation. And now, with that wide-angle view, now no one in the world has the capability to remember at scale and, if you will, operationalize that data. What we do is in sequence and longitudinally capture all those conversations and then represent them in a way such that your data becomes computable. So one of the key themes of our vision is that the data can be represented in such a way that the computer, in particular a machine learning algorithm, can come alongside of you and be your assistant relative to your own data. It's the structure in which the data is represented, certainly vastly different than the structure in our current legacy EMRs.
It's such a great point, and I've talked about this from some of the stuff I saw last week at the big AI conference. A lot of controversy about use of AI in education. And the takeaway I got from that after going to some breakout sessions, this is not replacing teachers, just as this technology is not replacing physicians. It's augmenting them.
Absolutely.
It's supplementing them. It's adding another dimension to the process, the experience. And a lot of times I think it's fair to say, Dr. Theodoro, that when a patient is first informed by the physician of some sort of medical condition, and if it's not a good one, and that's where you really want to know more information about what does my future look like, you tend to focus on that and you kind of tune out and you don't really receive all the other information. And the doctor doesn't have the luxury of waiting for an hour for you to kind of process that and then come back and add more information, which I expect it causes the additional 10 to 20 conversations. But I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to talk to the audience about this. You shared this with me in our meeting a few weeks ago, that these 10, 15-minute conversations that a physician has, this intimate conversation, you described it, behind the examination room door there, often ends up as maybe a 30 to 45-second exercise in updating the chart the physician has. And all this other information is not necessarily required to include in the chart. It's just a sort of additional information, but it's critical to the well-being and the peace of mind of the patient. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And whether or not my characterization of 45 to a minute or 30 to 45 seconds of the doctor's time to encapsulate all that goes on in 30 minutes is exactly accurate. What is very accurate is the totality of the give and take dialogue, again, the humanity of medicine, again, for no fault of the doctor or the healthcare provider, is terribly poorly represented in the EHR. Okay. So whether or not,
somebody
talks fast and can
electronic
get 30 minutes.
Health records, by the way.
Exactly.
So,
the electronic health records provides a satisfactory, and many times less than satisfactory, characterization of the totality. So I want my words not to be heard of what happened in that conversation behind the closed doors. To your point,
okay,
and in particular, the questions asked and answered by patient and doctor generally escape being represented in the electronic medical record. In general,
is the tool available today?
It is.
And does a patient need to get permission from the physician before they say, look, before you start talking? How do they do that? How does that conversation flow?
Another really good question. And so we think that it's always from a courtesy standpoint. As an aside, I can't tell you the frequency with which I am recorded now or linked in on a FaceTime, or at least LinkedIn on speakerphone with a loved one, if you will, at that time. But so it turns out that in 38 states we have something called single party consent. So therefore, in 12 states, we have all-party or two-party consent, meaning that in those states that don't enjoy single-party consent, it does require patient and doctor both giving consent.
Okay.
We would never argue, even in the 30 states, where if the patient wishes to record, they certainly may by state and federal law. Federal law, by the way, adheres to single-party consent.
Okay.
So anyway, as a courtesy,
yeah.
We believe that it's appropriate to share that with your doctor. And let me add one other point real quick. There are a couple of ambient listening technologies that have been brought to bear for the doctor and for their productivity. And so the concept of capturing the conversation, ours purely patient-based, the other one's more provider-based, that genie is out of the bottle. This is going to happen, and we want to be the leaders on the patient side.
Might there be a situation, Dr. Theodoro, where a doctor says, well, because they're obviously super sensitive to HIPAA,
yes,
and have concerns that you're recording me and I don't know where that's going, that there may be a risk to me as far as my obligations under HIPAA. How do you make them comfortable with that from a recorded health perspective?
I think that's a really good point. I'd probably, Gerard, go back to first principles. So I appreciate that particular stance by a physician, but if we go one step from that to first principles, there is no time that the doctor is any more concentrated and focused on that patient, that when the door closes, metaphorically and realistically, and they are there with one of their assistants, maybe not, and the patient and family, and they're bringing everything they have to bear, education, training, judgment, experience, on behalf of that patient. And every doctor, when pushed, asked, and even asked gently, would comment that at scale, no one can remember what I told them. And so first principles should probably subjugate the worry of a, oh my gosh, what did I say dynamic, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I know this is happening every day across the country and in physicians' quarters all the time. Right?
Gerard, there's 1.5 billion meaningful conversations in this year alone between patients and their providers.
Okay, so next question I have for you. Are there any plans to pursue any sort of patents? Do you have something so unique here? And what does the competitive landscape look like?
So that's a really good question. It is very, very difficult to have super tight IP-IT technology.
You're right.
It is really,
I just got
really
through
difficult.
telling somebody that this morning earlier. Exactly right.
So we have what are, again, referred to as self-hosted models. Therefore, they're our models that come out of the academic arm of this platform, and they are published, but the exact details are not. So the competitive landscape is probably worth another conversation at some other point, because what we're doing is building an ecosystem of like-minded solution providers to weave together a broader and deeper solution.
You hear the music. We got a break. Can you hang around? You got to go to the hospital.
I can hang around.
Because I want to dig into, that was my next line of questioning, was this desperate need for integration of patient information.
Yes, sir.
Coming right back with Dr. David Theodoro. Stay with us.
Thank you.
from the Siebert Paint.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
You must have touched the good music button this morning there, Rhino, because you got a little Toto. We had the Who earlier, a little Bob O'Reilly. That's a great tune there by Toto. Appreciate that. We're visiting with Dr. David Theodoro. He is a cardiovascular surgeon at St. Dominic, but more importantly, he's been instrumental and heavily involved in the creation of some AI-powered tools that are patient-enabling technologies, is the way I'm going to describe them here. So you've been talking about the Recorded Health product, and I think we covered that pretty well. I think it's something that's desperately needed. Tell the folks again, how many of these interactions happened over whatever the time period? 1.5 billion. Is that right?
So here's the math. The average patient in the United States, of which there are about 345 million, see a doctor 3 times a year. If you're
really
similar to my aging but still in decent health parents, it's 15 times a year. My wife and I maybe twice, but on average it's 3. So that number times the population is the first billion, and there's another 500 million meaningful interactions on the acute care side of the equation, otherwise known as a hospital. So there's about that many of these important interactions.
So one of the challenges, and this is just a layman's observation, nothing more, as just a person from the IT world and a patient, obviously, because I'm one of those people as well, is that your primary care doctor is pretty much responsible for screening bigger problems and treating things that a primary care doctor can do, which are pervasive, unfortunately, in our country. Hypertension, diabetes is an example, but screening for other things that might require a visit and with a specialist. And healthcare, like so many things in our world, is highly specialized, just as your particular specialty. But the human body's got all those parts in it. So you may end up being treated by numerous physicians, all which have different electronic health record systems, EHRs, most of which are siloed and not integrated. But as a patient, I want to kind of know, and even a physician, I want to know how all that stuff kind of feeds and integrates and affects and influences everything. And you're working on some technology to address that, right?
That is true, and right now that dilemma, that conundrum that you talked about in regards to siloed and fragmented, very important healthcare information, usually digitized in the health record, is poorly integrated at this particular point in time. There's been a lot of effort towards this concept of data interoperability,
right.
And most of that work at this point, Gerard, has been on the, to use your words earlier, the plumbing pieces of how to get data from a siloed, fragmented environment with FHIR and HL7 and all the other platforms, the API calls that stand behind the fast healthcare interoperability resource that was called FHIR.
These are just standards.
Those are all standards.
Yep.
And what that interoperability should be viewed as the structural plumbing to get the data. But if that's where you stop, you still don't have the semantics of the data, the context, the intent, the purpose of the data, and it's only if that data is represented in a different architectural platform than is currently available in our EMRs or EHRs, then the data can't be computable. Again, sort of cornerstone theme of the vision is that your healthcare data should be computable, and it should be under your control. Certainly attached to your primary caregivers and likely the primary institutions in which you are cared for in perhaps a shared fashion, but the patient should not be on the outside. The patient's on the outside right now. While you can get into your EMR, either one of the two major big platforms, through a portal, the context, the humanity, the semantics aren't there. Trust me, try to get in and query by natural language a question and find out the answer. That's not going to happen. You can find information, but the context and the weaving together of that information is by and large difficult, if not impossible. With the new representation format, it's very possible.
Okay, so this is a problem that the healthcare industry, and there are other industries, law enforcement's the other one that has been working to address this problem for a long time. Right. And the truth and reality is, in the nation just to our north, Canada, which has a socialized medicine implementation, it's actually easier there because you don't have all these, as far as this integration is concerned, because it's really one entity for the most part. In Great Britain, the NIH is another example. NIH or NHI? NHI, yeah. I'm confusing that with our agency over here. Right. So, but because it's kind of under one entity's purview, that's a little easier problem to address than what we have here. I'm not suggesting we should convert to socialized medicine. I'm just talking about it from a logistical perspective and a technical perspective. Yeah. A typical patient's got all these different doctors with all these different systems. I want to see what all that looks like, and I can't leverage the power of AI, as you put it, until I've got the structured data and the unstructured rich content, which comprises much of patient data, right? Altogether to be queryable and to use the generative AI tools.
So what you've outlined in Canada and Great Britain is certainly a single-payer system by and large government. They're enclaves of privatization in both of those countries. But by and large, at least from a structural standpoint, when we were off the air, we talked a little bit about the structural interoperability and what I'm interested in, our team is interested in what's called logical interoperability. So you still, while you have a large part of the structural interoperability problem solved in, for instance, Canada and Great Britain on the basis of what you just said, the logical interoperability for the combination of that data that maintains, again, semantics, context, intent, purpose, etc., is not there.
Still another layer.
It just can't be there unless the data is computable.
And really what you mean by that is stored in a format that I can use natural language query tools to access it, to provide answers and generate content that makes sense to me as a patient.
Yes, there's no doubt that I am teetering on my next comment and going into a wonky technical piece of this, but what we're really talking about is an ontology-governed personal clinical knowledge graph. Now, that's a mouthful, but what that basically is, that's the formality of what you just said.
That's right.
And when data is structured such that the data is converted to, generally with quotes around it, code, and the important rich context of that data is addressable and able to be analyzed by machine learning techniques and algorithms and reasoning engines and inference engines. Now that's the real game changer, and that's exactly what we're going after.
And not only would this improve, I got to believe, Dr. Theodoro, the overall patient experience, but it's an economic issue as well, is it not?
When I talk about the damaging effects on outcomes of the base case problem, we all forget, patients can't remember. In parentheses, it's not only clinical outcomes, it's safety and financial outcomes. Yeah. So the monetization of this problem that we've talked about, let me give you one example. Just alone, medication non-compliance. In other words, Grandpa doesn't take his medications. He didn't get them filled, or when he takes them, he doesn't take them right. That tracks itself from a monetization in waste out to somewhere between 100 and 300 billion. And a more aggressive economist, when you broaden the breadth and scope and depth of that problem, is 500, $500 billion every single year in medication non-compliance alone.
I play golf. I've talked about this on the show before with a bunch of doctors. You probably know them. But on the golf course when we're walking, that's like their number one complaint.
Yeah.
The patient just won't take their medicine. It's not that they can't afford it. They just won't take it. And we could solve so many problems and save a bunch of money.
No question. The platform also, as we expand it, will clearly have any number of vehicles of prompting. So you can text prompt, email prompt, call prompt,
gotcha,
et cetera. So that's once you have a patient in that ecosystem, and you can understand and monitor where they may be, if you will, falling off the wagon, so to speak, you can prompt.
My last question for you. I know and we didn't get to it. You're working with a lot of prominent figures. You have even a relationship with Dr. Mehmet Oz that serves in the Trump administration, and you got lots of other smart people working with. So my question is, are we going to keep this company here in Mississippi?
We are definitely going to keep this company in Mississippi.
That's what I wanted to hear.
That is the answer. And we want Mississippi to embrace this company.
Yes, sir.
And it's here.
Yes, sir. Dr. David Alan Theodoro, co-founder and CEO of Recorded Health, also a cardiovascular surgeon, chief of that at St. Dominic's, been our guest. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Gerard.
Coming right back with the final segment here in the Element Well studio.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We appreciate Dr. Theodoro for coming on. So, a mutual friend introduced us, and I wanted to know more about what he was doing. And he met me up here about a month ago, and we spent a couple hours in the green room just reviewing everything he had going on. It's just fascinating to me. And the one takeaway I hope people take, other than the fact that this is a real problem, and Rhino, you work somewhat in that industry, and a couple of things that struck me that I know you're aware of are a problem. One is, the communication is difficult because it's complicated. And even smart people. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I kind of, what exactly does that mean? But I will ask the questions. Some people, as you know, won't. And they kind of zone out, especially if you get a diagnosis, and it's perfectly understandable. But it would be great if there was some way to capture that information in an understandable format that could be reviewed after the fact. And the second thing is, and guys, this is a huge problem, and I know you know this from being around the pharmaceutical industry. People don't take their dang medicine. I can't tell you the number of doctors that I literally run into in my social circles that say, if they just take their dang medicine, because you know what happens is they show up back at the doctor's office and they're on Medicare, they're on Medicaid, or they're on subsidized health care. It's like, if you just take your medicine, you wouldn't have to come in here. And I'm not talking about complicated medicine, just simple types of stuff that we know does work and solve problems. We're not talking about novel new medicine that was introduced last month. We're talking about stuff that's been around forever. It's not that they can't afford it. They buy it. They just don't. And you know what's worse? Parents not requiring their kids and making sure their kids are taking medicine. And it could be for something they need to take for a short period of time to address some issue. And they don't. And then whatever the problem is, the medical problem is, just gets worse, and they end up back in the office.
Yeah, the most prevalent example of that would be antibiotics.
Yeah.
You're supposed to take an entire course of antibiotics to make sure the bug is out of your system. But there are way too many people that they'll take their antibiotics until they feel better, and it's not quite completely gone. It's not quite out of their system, and now you've created a new strain of that bug that doesn't really get knocked down all that much by that brand of antibiotics.
Because you can advance to a point where you don't have any pain or don't have any symptoms, right? But the thing's still festering in you and could come back, and you have a relapse, and then it's worse. So I'm saying this from an economic perspective. This what did he call it, non-compliance? That's costing us all money. When you think about half the population that has insurance in this country is on Medicare or Medicaid, which is paid for by taxpayers, as an example. And then subsidized coverage, that's now 25 million people in the country have that. So I'm not trying to lecture people. I'm just trying to say, man, we're our own worst enemy here, right? That's a way we can fix stuff rather easily. I mean, just take the medicine that's been prescribed to you in accordance with the prescriptions. Now,
and the other problem is somebody will show up to the doctor. The doctor will say, hey, you could probably use to lose a few pounds or exercise a bit more. Or
no doubt.
Stop smoking, stop drinking, stop doing this or that. And the patient will go, well, I'm not going to give that up, but you're still going to fix me, right?
I've absolutely heard doctors say the same thing. Okay, yeah, but you're still going to take care of me, right, doc? No, you don't get it. You need to fix it. And that's the other aspect of this. How much does that cost us? Just poor lifestyles. Now, let's be honest. There are a lot of people that can live a poor lifestyle, and it doesn't affect them. It's their metabolism, the way they're wired. There's others that they can't do that, and it causes problems. And those problems cost money to treat. So just change your dang lifestyle and not rely on what I think it's Mehmet Oz himself even said. You know, we're in the sick business and not in the health business or something like that. I'm not stating it properly, but our whole healthcare system is designed around treating sick people as opposed to, I think, the people responding and adhering to better lifestyles, taking their medicine, things they can do to stay away from the doctor in the hospital. And we built this whole apparatus. It's very expensive around, oh, yeah, you're going to get sick. You're going to need us.
And then you have the patients that say they're prescribed a blood pressure medication, and they get their prescription, and they don't take it, and they go back to the doctor, and their blood pressure's still up, and they lie to the doctor and say they have been taking it. Then the doctor ups the dose, and you can have complications from that.
Yep. I've seen that, literally. I've seen somebody bend over. It makes you lightheaded, because the way it changes you. And they just, boom, fall right there. You're absolutely right. The doctor just changed my medication. Yeah, you probably didn't need to. We're out of here today. Back again tomorrow. Stay safe, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.